Welcome to Cooper Beeline Cable Ladder Training, Lesson 2, Understanding Codes and Standards for Cable Ladder. In this lesson, we will cover the code writers, independent third-party vendors, and manufacturer groups that set standards, write code, and test Cooper Beeline cable ladder products, as well as other competitive brands of cable ladder. Meeting or exceeding the standards and receiving positive test results are important to Cooper Beeline. They help us gain spec position throughout each stage of a project. Before we get started, let's review what we will be covering in this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to understand who the third-party companies are and what role they play in the testing of cable ladder systems. Explain when the third-party companies are integrated into the design and installation of cable ladder systems, and identify where these standards and tests are required geographically. You should expect to complete this lesson in approximately 15 minutes. Let's look at who some of the major third parties are. Here's a list that illustrates a few of the major third parties and their functions. The chart is broken down by the name of the organization or standard. Note, this is not a comprehensive list, as there are many third-party companies used in the electrical products industry. The National Electrical Code, NEC, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, are both code writers. In other words, they help write the standards that the electrical industry is required to meet. The Canadian Standards Association, CSA, writes code and standards, but it also lists and classifies products and is responsible for writing the Canadian Electrical Code, CEC. CSA also reviews a manufacturer's testing procedures to ensure they are done properly. The National Electrical Manufacturers Association, NEMA, consists of 450 member companies, including Cooper Beeline, that manufactures products used in the generation, transmission and distribution, control, and end use of electricity. NEMA provides a forum for these companies to develop technical standards to promote the safe and effective design, installation, and use of electrical products. The remaining companies listed are independent third-party companies. A majority of them write standards, while some also review products or testing procedures, list and classify products, or review manufacturer's quality approval process. The independent third-party companies are not affiliated with any manufacturer or user of the products being tested, therefore no commercial bias is present. This helps provide additional credibility to the manufacturer's third-party company witnessed test reports. Note, this is not a comprehensive list, as there are many third-party companies used in the electrical products industry. UL, or Underwriters Laboratories, Inc., is an organization that was created to maintain laboratories for the purpose of testing and examining materials, devices, and systems. For a metallic cable ladder to be used as an equipment ground conductor, UL must test the cable ladder for its ability to conduct a current. For classification, a defined cross-section is required to carry a defined current. After successful product testing, Cooper Beeline's cable ladder has received a UL classification stating, "This product is classified by Underwriters Laboratories, Inc. as to its suitability as an equipment grounding conductor only." This is printed on labels and attached to each Cooper Beeline cable ladder, straight section, and fitting as shown. What types of third-party company testing are required for cable ladder manufacturers? Both NEMA and CSA require load and grounding testing, while UL only tests for grounding. IEC requires load, grounding, and impact tests. For more information on IEC and NEMA testing, refer to Lesson 3, Understanding the Difference between NEMA and IEC. Third-party companies are present in every stage of the design process. The flowchart shown here is an example of a scenario of when these third parties may play a role. Not all processes are the same, but are similar to the one shown here. In the preliminary design stage, end users may require specific standards to be met. This is an important step in the process, in order to even be considered as an approved vendor on the specification. In the final design stage, engineers specify the product details. In this example set by NEMA, these will include standards that the product must meet. In the bid and buy stage, distributors, end users, may request documentation confirming that the product meets certain standards and code. Therefore, it is important to maintain current documentation of the approvals required for a specific project. In the installation and completion stage, the third-party companies may inspect the installation to ensure it adheres to all the codes they have established. In the United States, cable ladder requires NEC compliance, while Canada requires CSA compliance. For the rest of the globe, IEC compliance is the common requirement for cable ladder. It is always important to know the end destination where the cable ladder is being installed, in order to understand the codes and standards that the product must meet. Although these codes apply to these specific regions, it is important to note that a project could be designed by an engineer in the United States, but the project where the cable ladder is installed could be in Asia. Therefore, the cable ladder would need to meet IEC compliance, not NEC. The independent third-party companies work to expand their geographic reach with national, regional, and local offices located around the world. Some of these specialize in specific markets. For example, Det Norske Veritas, DNV, American Bureau of Shipping, ABS, and Bureau Veritas, BV, are specifically dedicated to marine and ship classifications, and First Point Assessment Limited, FPAL, focuses on the oil and gas market. NEMA standards can be applied anywhere in the world, but are most common in North America, the Middle East, and parts of Southeast Asia where there are large projects, global end users, and engineering, procurement, and construction, EPC. You have reached the end of this lesson on understanding codes and standards for cable ladder. To summarize, the important points covered in this lesson are: the code writers, independent third-party companies, and manufacturer groups set standards, write codes, and test products that are used in the electrical industry. Compliance to certain standards may be required to be considered an approved manufacturer in the specification for a given project. The third-party companies provide documentation for proof that these products meet the set standards. Lastly, the third-party companies are present globally, and certain tests are specific to set regions around the world. You should now be able to understand who the third parties are, understand what roles the third-party companies play in the testing and compliance of cable ladder systems, explain when the third-party companies are integrated into the design and installation of cable ladder, and identify where these standards and tests are required geographically.